I'm here with Mikey Colella. Mikey is a former player for Virtua Hockey / Team Comcast and now Flyers Elite. And he's from the South Jersey area. And going to spend a little bit of time talking to him, discussing kind of his journey through hockey, the experiences that he's had, the adversity he's faced at times, the success that he's accomplished, and then also what to expect going forward. So, Mike, it's great to have you here. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day. And I guess we'll just, kind of jump right into this.
Yeah.
So if you can, just let us know, how old were you when you started? Where were you playing? And go from there.
So I started playing around 3 years old. Dad was a pretty big hockey guy, big baseball guy too, but he wanted to put me in hockey and just kind of fell in love with it right away. And I never wanted to take my skates off. And just rinks where I used to live at, like Choice Arena roller rink that I used to go to a lot. My dad was a big men's league guy and roller over there, so he'd bring me as a kid, and I'd always just skate while he was playing and just never wanted to leave the rink really. And then just basically grew up there playing roller for a year, and then went to like ice at like 3.5, 4-ish, and then I started skating with Gaudreau, with Guy, and just kind of took off from there and just never really stopped, and just absolutely loved the game from there.
That's awesome. At 3 years old, that's obviously pretty early, early on. And you said you also did roller. Was that something you continued on as well, or was it strictly just an ice hockey career for you?
No, I still do it every summer. I think for me, it's never hurt my game. If anything, it's always helped it. I mean, I hear people tell me, roller can hurt your game. Roller does this to your game. And for me, it didn't really matter. Like, I knew what I had to do for ice and what I do for roller. So it was completely different game styles. So it kind of helped me, with the mentality, and just made sure I was using my mind, and just helped me with my hockey skills, and, with my vision and everything like that. So roller's a lot slower than ice, but just how you play it. You could play the same way in ice, but it's just how you want to play different games and stuff like that. But yeah, I still play it to this day every day and over the summer. So
That's awesome. So you're still playing that now. Mike, for guys that don't know you, how old are you?
I'm 20 years old. I turned 21 in June.
All right, so you've been playing hockey now for 17 years, both ice and roller. You
Yeah.
mentioned that your dad was a baseball guy. Are there any other sports that you dabbled in growing up?
I did play baseball. That was probably the only other sport that I played. Growing up in South Philly with him sometimes, and his best friend. So I became really good friends with his son, and he coached a baseball team down in Philly. So I'd always, during either school year or something like that, when middle school or elementary school, I'd always play in a baseball league down there in Philly, and then played in high school until like my sophomore year. And then that's when I had to call it quits and just mainly focus on hockey.
Yeah, there's always a constant debate about kids playing in multiple sports, the benefits of that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
kids now specializing very early on, some thinking that's the way. In your experience, do you think playing multiple sports, whether that's ice, roller, baseball, has that helped you in a way, and transferring from one sport to the other?
Yeah, I think it shows you a team environment. With baseball, it's a little bit different intensity. And it has a quick mindset too, because if, you're going up the plate, you strike out, you're in like a tough situation, pull through for your team, you got to have a quick mindset and be like, hey, I'm going to get it back in the next play. It's the same thing for hockey. And as long as, you're running a lot, you're staying in shape, you're doing stuff, and just helps with the mindset and just, what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Sure. Now you said South Philly area growing up. I know you're living now in South Jersey. Safe to say you're a Flyers fan?
Yeah. Oh,
Is
yeah.
that's your go-to team?
That's my go-to.
Yeah. As a kid, was there anybody in particular that you looked up to player-wise in the NHL that you respected, where you wanted to emulate your game after?
Um, I think I've had a better understanding it now that I've gotten older a little bit. When I was growing up, Gaudreau, especially from this area, always wanted to follow his steps and do what he did and how he did it and everything. But now that I've seen and gone through everything, I think now if the type of player that I wanted to be, like, if anything, you'd want to be like a Brad Marchand with skill, kind of get in your face a little bit, kind of plays with a little bit of grit, doesn't really care sometimes, and just wants to play fast, hard, and he could score. So that's what I really want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you can, give me a little bit of a rundown, kind of how your ice hockey career, especially your youth, so your, let's call it your squirt, 10 UH through your 18 UH, how that worked out. Because we have, all this talk of tier 1, tier 2, doesn't matter. Is there a time that you need to be? And, I know you really well, and your path has definitely been unique. And if you can, just kind of give us a rundown on how that played out.
So I started at Flyers Youth at Voorhees, played there for a few years. And then once Keith Primo was like a second dad to me, he decided to leave and go to Pennsauken and start Comcast. And, because they only had 97 and up when I was still playing at Flyers Youth and all this stuff. And they didn't have any lower end teams. And Keith wanted to go there and make a 98 team. But I was still a 99 at the time, but he wanted me to come over, see what would happen. And Carson Briere, and Caden Primo, which was his son at the time, he's a goalie. We were the only 3 99s that ended up making that team. And the 98 year was just unbelievable with the team that we had. I mean, it was probably one of the best Comcast teams that we probably could have assembled at that young, at an age like that. And, you hear some guys like Kyle Weller, you get, Kalen, Carson, me, Caden, Aaron McGoyan. So you had guys that were really good, and we just came together. And then after that, it kind of just took off, and the next year was hitting. And that's when everything started taking off with Comcast. They started getting younger teams. They started getting a 99 team. And that's when Darian Hatcher stepped in and was like, hey, starting a 99 team, I want you to come back to your age group. And I didn't have a problem with it, because the 98 year, the next year after that, was the first year of hitting. And, size-wise, I wasn't ready for it. And physically-wise, I wasn't ready for it. So it was like, yeah, no worries. Me and Carson went down. And, we played there for a little bit. And then once it started getting a little bit serious, the guys were bigger, kind of veered off a little bit. And I knew I didn't like where I was at. And kind of stepped away from AAA. And Patch was like, listen, just because something you can't control right now, like, we would love to keep you and all this stuff, but had to go a different path for that. And then didn't know where I was going to go, because it's the first time, like, I was really cut for something I couldn't control and everything like that. So I went to Hollydale for 1 year, played AA there, and then had a good year there. Finished that year. Wasn't really at the point where I felt like I can go back to AAA and go back and make a statement. And so I got a few phone calls. Some of my buddies were going over to the Igloo Jaguars in Mount Laurel, and got a call there. Coach called me. It's like, hey, what are you thinking? I was like, I didn't really know what I was thinking yet. I knew kind of still wanted another year to maybe see what I could do, develop a little bit, and make sure I could focus on myself more than anything. And went to that year, had an unbelievable time. I had some buddies go there. So some of my childhood best friends were playing, and it was really cool to play with them for a year. And then after that year, that's when I really decided, like, we were up in Texas for nationals that year, and people are calling me left and right. Oh, are you coming back? Are you doing this? What are you doing next year? And I'm like, I'm in nationals right now. Like, I'm not worried about what I'm doing next year. And especially with rumors of you being the head coach of the 16 team, we've always talked about me playing for you, and I've always wanted to play for you. So it was just a mindset where, I had a really good another year. I was pretty confident with myself and where I was at as a person, as a player. And, I made the choice to come back. Was probably the last guy you picked. And then, kind of just, you pushed me and turned me up from there, and took off that year. And then
let me stop you there, Mike. So I find this interesting, right? Because you said you started at a tier 2 level, which was over at Flyers Youth in Voorhees, which, for most kids, it's kind of the starting point, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of found yourself with a good group of players, skill-wise, commitment-wise, and surrounding yourself with a good coach at an early age, which I think probably helped really fast with the development, both the skill development, the understanding of the hockey sense, as well as probably that competitive nature, right? Because the coaches you mentioned so far, you had Keith, you had Hatch, very competitive guys, NHL backgrounds, of course.
Yeah.
So what better guys to learn from at an early age, which I think is great to fuel that drive. And then I thought it was unique because you said it was if I have that correctly, it was at your Bantam age where you went back to your birth year from
Mhm.
'98 to go play with your birth year of '99.
Yeah.
Spent a season with Hatch,
Mhm.
right? And then where a lot of times you start to see a change and a move from tier 2 to tier 1 at Bantam, you actually found yourself going in the opposite direction,
Yeah.
right? You're moving
Yeah.
from a tier 1 level where you've been surrounded and playing with some of the best kids in the country
Yeah.
and finding yourself more or less being demoted to
Yeah.
tier 2. And
Yeah.
some of that completely out of your control. And you mentioned it early. um, Physical presence, right?
Mhm.
An undersized kid, Hatch's team and Keith's team, like, they were big boys.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember
his team
watching
was
them
pretty
play.
big, yeah.
And you were, 5 foot and
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
105 pounds on a good
Yeah.
day, and all your equipment.
Didn't have too much meat on me.
And I don't think anybody would have denied your hockey sense and your skills that you had, but some of those things that were out of your control.
Yeah.
Um, and you left for, I think you said it was 2 years, correct?
2 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
I left for 2.
What I remember in that transition, looking back on it, is you left, you put yourself in a position where you could go and play,
Mhm.
right? Could you have possibly stayed and maybe not seen a lot of ice time and not contributed? Possibly. Would that have been fun?
No.
Probably not, right? So you went somewhere where you could play and develop. And
Mhm.
you took 2 years at a Bantam major at a U16 level to play tier 2, went to nationals, had that experience, which I'm sure also helped, right?
Yeah. It was
Taught
unbelievable.
you what was needed to win,
Mhm.
to succeed. And if I'm not mistaken, your role on that team was probably pretty significant. You agree?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I think Carson and I had the most workload of that team, so
yeah. So,
so
you kind of use that experience, and I'm sure it was probably very motivating for you. And
Mhm.
you said you wanted to make that push to come back for your second year of U16 to play AAA again.
Yeah.
And I can remember that year. You mentioned I was coaching, and I bet you we probably had 60 to 70 kids come to that tryout. We had
Oh, it was huge
we
when
had
I
a,
walked
a
in that game.
2,000 group that was moving
Yeah.
up to 16 that just came off of their run to go to nationals. You
Mhm.
had a really successful 99 group that was there, and I remember when you came back to try out, you said, "Listen, I'm coming back. I would love to try out the opportunity to play for this team." And you hit the nail on the head. You were our last pick. And I remember in tryouts actually pulling you aside and a couple other kids and said, "Hey, look, you're one of a few for a couple spots. What can you do different?" And I'm curious. You've been faced with a decent amount of adversity at a youth hockey level,
Mhm.
going on a fast track with a really high level group of kids, to taking a step back to go play tier 2 in what some would call crucial ages,
Mhm.
to come back hoping to make a team, face adversity right away at tryouts. And when you fast forward through that, you made the team. And do you remember what position in the lineup you were?
Oh, I was maybe 4th line left wing with no center, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
first week in Connecticut, yeah, you had to rotate, like, Fioli or center through us, yeah.
and
Remember that.
I remember having conversations with you saying, "Be patient,
Mhm.
stay committed." Um, can you reflect on that? I mean, it was probably a good month before things
Yeah.
really started to shift, and
Oh, yeah.
maybe just kind of paint a picture. What was that like? I mean, that was a fair amount of adversity early on at a U16 level.
Mhm.
Can you kind of give me a play? Like, how did you handle that? What did you go through?
So I knew coming back, and when I made that team, as soon as I saw my name on the board, people were telling me, "Oh, you're not gonna play. You know, you'll be lucky if you play a certain amount of minutes here. You'll be lucky in situations like power play and stuff like that." And it didn't really matter. If I saw my name on that board, I was gonna take my opportunities, and it was gonna be all up to me because it was gonna be my decision and my decision only. My parents were gonna support me no matter what. And going in the tryouts and stuff that week, even the third night, I was still having a lot of talks with my dad. And he was like, listen, you do whatever you want to do. It's going to be your future that's going to be on the line here. And, just basically left up to me. And when I saw that, and we go through camp, had a pretty good training camp, wasn't in the best conditioning shape that I had. And then going into the first weekend, I knew as soon as I saw the puck drop of the first shift, I was like, yeah, I know I'm not going to be playing a little bit. So need to just make sure that, because the jump's a lot different, especially when you're going to a second year, U16, and, your kids are a little bit faster. The kids are a little bit bigger, stronger. And, when you've been out of it for 2 years and you don't see that size, you don't see the fast, like, physicalness of it, the aspect of it, it kind of doesn't take a toll on you, but it kind of has to give your body and your mind a little bit of time to adjust. And I think those of just learning from guys and just making sure I was a good teammate. And that's key for a young kid like that. If you're a good teammate, the boys they'll trust you. And if you have a good locker room, good relationship with all the guys, and just making sure I was staying by them. And when the time came, they were staying by me. But yeah, the first month and a half wasn't the best, but it's just something that you had to do. And I knew I wasn't going to be ready right away. And I knew that, and I was fine with it, as long as I just kept working and you pushed me, and I had a good staff behind me and good teammates that allowed me to have success in the beginning of the year and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. You came into it, you wanted to be a part of a team, which was, I think sometimes that's a little lost at times. And you were a phenomenal teammate during that period. And after about a month or so into the season, you could see things change and your confidence would pick up and your opportunities increased. And to me, it turned out to be one of the best seasons, that we had as a team. And for you individually to really go from where you were in a depth chart to where you finished, I mean, it was night and day, complete opposite. And, if you look past that year, you had your 16 year, you move up to 18s, we go up as a group. You spend 2 years at 18s, not one, which, some can argue depending on the path that you're going at, right? Because you get a lot of kids that play 1 year, 2 years of 16, 1 year of 18, and then off they go.
Yeah.
And here you are, you're now playing a second year of 18. You're out of school. You're one of the older guys on the team now. Did you feel pressure, like this is a make or break? Do I just got to go out and play? On a team, our success that year, it was okay. It wasn't great. We had our ups and downs, no doubt. And I think even you as a player might even say, you know what, I kind of had my ups and downs as well. But, how do you continue to push through that?
I never really thought of it as my last opportunity. I think, our schedule that year was pretty tough. I think we played like close to 50 something or 60 something games. So I knew if I had a tough span here and there, like a tough 2-3 games, I had to really turn it around and be sharp in practice. And, you held me accountable because I was probably one of the oldest guys in the team and been around the rink for that long. And I've known all the guys and just had to make sure that we were all tight and we were, coming to the rink every day and we were working hard. And, the time on the ice that we had, we were make sure we were using the best of it. And even we were working out and stuff. So it just kind of helped me, to be honest, because when you're a leader like that in the locker room, it gives you so much more responsibility, which is good because it shows you how to handle, like if something doesn't go your way, you're making sure that you're keeping your teammates up, but they're also going to make sure, everyone else is accountable too if you're doing the same thing for everybody. So I think that year I never really thought about it as a make or break. I think I always just knew what I had. It was just me giving it every day and what I could do. And when we practiced and we played and that year, it wasn't really going. It started off pretty good and then kind of took its toll a little bit the few weeks in. And then you could tell like I wanted to get back to it a little bit and just be the better team that we could. Cause the guys in the room, we had a really good locker room still. So nobody really wanted to count us out or anything like that. And playing against the Avalanche, you always wanted to beat them. Like rivals since the 16U year and playing against probably one of the best teams in the country for every year at the time. And we get to see them 4 times a year. So those games were always pretty pretty circled on the calendar and stuff like that. But it was good. It was an awesome
Sure.
year.
So we get out of that year, and then you're faced with, okay, what's next? And I can
Yeah.
remember we were getting towards the end of that season. You were generating a good amount of interest from junior levels, and we would sit there and we would dissect and go through and say, hey, this is where we're at. These are some of the teams that are talking to you. And it was a
Yeah.
wide range, right? From USBHL teams to North
Clinton
American League
Hall.
teams.
Yeah.
Everybody, of course, wants to play in the USHL.
Yeah.
And, for you, we sat there and we went through the process, and I can remember having discussions and you and I saying, look, you need to go somewhere where you're going to play, where you're wanted. And, you ended up going to the USBHL and playing for the, it was
PAL Islanders. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe you were there, a couple weeks? Is that right?
7 games. Yeah. I was there for like 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah. And had a handful of points, if
Yeah.
if I remember. And next thing you know, you're getting a phone call from the USHL, right? And I believe it was Omaha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you went from this kid at the end of 18s to hoping to get some options, going somewhere in a spot where you could play right away, put up a ton of points, and then the door opens up. And if you can, walk me through, like, how did that work? You end up at PAL, you get a phone call. What happened next?
Yeah, I woke up one morning with a missed call from my coach because he gave us off that day, and we came back from a road trip, and we were up in Utica. We just got finished the tournament up in Boston, up in Marlboro, and then the following weekend we were up in Utica against the Bandits for 2, and then we came home. So we end up coming home, and he gives us off the next day, and he calls me, and I'm like, hey, like, I call him back, what's up? He's like, yeah, I just got a call, like, pack your bags. And I said, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, pack your bags. You're going to Omaha tomorrow. And I was like, oh, USHL? And he's like, yeah, like, pack your bags. And I was like, oh, like, hold up here. Like, what's happening? Like, what's going on? Like, how is this even happening right now? And he's like, listen, Omaha coach called me. They want you to go there. They see what you're doing here, and go. And I remember I'm like, I don't know. I'm in the back of my head. I'm like, do I really want to do this right now? Like, it's still early. And I remember calling you right after it. And I was like, listen, just got a call to go to the USHL. What do you think? And you were like, you left it up to me. And you gave me pros and cons to it. And you basically left it in my hands and called my parents after you. And then we were talking, and I know my parents called you. And then I called you again later, and then got a phone call from the Omaha head coach. He was like, yeah, he should be probably calling you in about an hour and a half. And then get the call. He's like, hey, introduce himself. Great guy. Was like, hey, I want you to come to Omaha. We see what you're doing here. We really could use you up in Omaha. And I said, absolutely. And, you supported my decision, and you were like, hey, it's going to be your journey. And now you're going there to fight, and you're going there to earn a spot every day. And you're going up against the best kids in the country at whatever age they are. And, you got young kids that are going to be potential NHL draft picks one day, and you get to practice in the atmosphere too. It's just a completely different atmosphere. And 2 days later, I know I'm packing my bags, and I'm on a 6 a.m. flight to Omaha for practice the next day. So.
Yeah, pretty wild ride.
Yeah.
So you get in Omaha, just a quick version. I actually remember watching your first game with your dad, and we're watching surrounded by this little computer. And I believe you end up scoring in overtime for the game winner in your first game in the NHL. Excitement, to say the least. And as a coach and a friend to watch, that was pretty remarkable. But it also didn't, it didn't go so well shortly after, right? This fairy tale story sort of hit a couple speed bumps. Tell me what happened after that? You're in Omaha for a bit.
So I was in Omaha for a little, yeah. at the time, I was there for like 2 weeks, and then I committed on Halloween of that year.
You made a
To
commitment to college?
Colorado, yeah, Colorado College on that Halloween. Then started to not decline, but I wasn't playing my best hockey. And there, you know, if you're not playing your best, you're probably not going to play a lot. You're going to be bumped here. You're going to be bumped there. And then I remember I leave Omaha. I go back to PAL for, I think it was 3 games. I go back for 3 games, and thinking I'm settling back for a little bit. And before I'm even playing my first game back with them, I'm getting a call from Colorado saying you're going to Tri-City on Monday. So like you're gonna finish this the 3 games with PAL, and then you're going right to Tri-City. So make sure you're packed and ready. And
So you're going back to the USHL again?
Yeah. I was there for 3 games. I believe we won all 3 of those games too in the NCDC. Played against Max the first game, which was pretty cool. You know, we never really played against each other like that, and it was nice to play against a childhood friend like that. So we played against each other the first game, and then after the 3rd game, went back, told my billets, like, hey, I'm leaving again, and I had to pack all my stuff, and then they dropped me off at the airport again on, I think, a Monday or Tuesday morning to fly right to Tri-City and go to Tri-City and had a blast there.
So that's pretty wild. It sounds like within a month or so, you're in the East Coast playing on one team. You're out to Omaha playing the USHL. You come back to the East Coast, and then you're headed out to another team. And you're in Tri-City, who I believe at that time was probably the number 1 team in the league.
Yeah, they were the best team in the league.
Yeah, so
they won the Anderson that year, and went to the Western Conference semifinals. But before the deadline, that's when I got traded to Lincoln. So I got traded to Lincoln right before the deadline.
Okay. So you finished the year in Lincoln. Team was okay, but you were in there. You were playing a good amount of minutes and doing well. So that season ends. So your first year of juniors couldn't have gone any easier, of course, right?
Yeah.
You start in one team, go to another. By the end of the year, you've got a couple teams under your belt, but you're still grinding it out, right? You know, this is what you want to do regardless of the obstacles that you're facing. And I would imagine at this point, you probably had a couple people tell you, look, Mike, like, just, you got to stop, right? Is this worth it? Is it not worth it? Should you just move on and maybe go to school? Because at this point, you're now your 2nd year out of high school. And I wouldn't be shocked if some players said, you know what, I've been traded. This isn't fun. I don't like it. And I mean, you play the game long enough, you're going to get traded at some point, and it's not a fun feeling. It's a difficult situation to handle, but here, you know, you went through it, no problem. So you finish a year in Lincoln. Your first year of juniors is now complete, and the anticipation is the upcoming season. I'm going back to Lincoln. I've got my commitment to Colorado College. So you go back to Lincoln in the summer for camp, and you find out that they're not signing you. They wanted to go the question is, like, what just happened, right? I finished the year well. I've got a great relationship with the staff. Things are going well. And you're 12 months removed from midget hockey, and you're sitting there again saying, well, what do I do? So how does this happen? And if you can Lincoln doesn't work out, what happens next for you?
So before the Lincoln season even ended, I received a call from Jeff Tambellini. He was the coach and GM of Trail in the BCHL, and he called me, and he was like, "Hey, what do you think for next year?" And I'm like, to be honest, right now, I don't know. I still got like 3.5 weeks left in my Lincoln schedule, and the season, and everything. He's like, well, you know, I'd love to have you next year. And that's when one of my buddies, who like I didn't really know at the time, was named captain there. And I was like, oh, like Phil's going the Trail, and he's gonna be the captain next year. He's like, yeah. And we were talking about, because Phil played for Lincoln, and then he got traded to Central Illinois, and I was like, oh, he's gonna be captain. And I was like, yeah, that might be a really good team. And I remember getting a call that night from my PAL coach, who I was really good friends with, and he was really good buddies with Jeff Tambellini, the trail coach. And he's like, hey, trail's going to be good next year. If anything doesn't happen with Lincoln, Trail wants you there. And I was like, hey, I'll take it in consideration. I'm not going to shut it down right away because, it's not going to shut anything down if I don't even know anything's definite yet. Still had to finish the year, still had to do exit interviews and stuff like that. And we finished the year. We go in the office for exit meetings. Mine's like 8:20 a.m. I'm in the office and they're like, yeah, loved you this year. We'll see you. Can't wait to see you at camp and everything. So I was like, yeah, I called Trail, wanted to give them the respect. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going back. I'll let you know if anything changes. And we just kind of kept staying in touch a little bit and went to camp. Didn't like how they were going. They wanted to go a little bit bigger and I knew that wasn't my game right away. And I've been through it my whole life. So I was like, maybe it's telling me that I probably shouldn't go back, and we parted ways. And within 30 minutes after, I'm packing my bags in my billet house, and I called Trail and I was like, hey, didn't work out with Lincoln, leaving the airport now. Is that offer still on the table? And he's like, yeah, let me call you back in 20 minutes. And then I got a call from my PAL coach. He's like, hey, if he offers you a spot, take it. And I was like, yeah, I was going to anyway. I mean, I understood the situation I was going in. I was going to be a 20-year-old age out and an import. So that would have been the first time they would have had limited spots for a guy like me or anything like that. And I took that into consideration, was very fortunate for that. And kind of called him. He called me back 20, 30 minutes later and was like, hey, you want to come to Trail? I said, absolutely. And sent me the papers when I flew home that night and signed the next day. And I was playing for Trail the next year. So at least I had a full summer to know where I was playing.
Right. So you spent the 1920 season in Trail on a pretty offensive team, kind of fits your style of game, very wide open, fast pace, high skill, based on the points that you were putting up this year, both individually, a ton of success, as well as your team having a lot of success, which we know, unfortunately due to circumstances, everybody's season was cut a little short. However, if I'm not mistaken, towards the end of your season, you were kind of hit with, again, some devastating news, and that Colorado College and you were going to part ways with some issues just on the Colorado College side. As a 20-year-old overager, at that point, I think you were probably entering your last month, maybe 2 months of the regular season. You're sitting here, you're 20 years old. Your commitment to Colorado College is now gone. You're having a phenomenal season individually. I think top 5 in the league in points. Your team's second in the league or second in the division. You're kind of focused now on, at that point, getting ready for playoffs, a run deep into the playoffs and trying to win a league here in the BCHL. And now you're sitting here at 20 with no college scholarship, completely gone. Devastating to say the least. You and I had conversations during that period. I had conversations with your parents, and you feel like this settles, this feeling of I'm all set. I've got the next 4 years mapped out. I'm going to CC. This is going to be awesome. And you wake up one day and it's all gone. And completely out of your control. How did you get through that? How did you not want to, maybe walk away from the game, or at some point say, you know what, these guys that have been telling me all along I shouldn't be doing this, I'm not good enough to do this, you're too small, or you're never going to make this. At what point did you, you're faced with, maybe are these guys right? Is something wrong? Why is this happening? But you didn't do that. And I'm curious, how did you get through that mentally? What pushed you through?
So at the time, Carson Briere was my roommate, and the kid's like a brother to me. So we were always pretty tight, and he kind of just stayed with me, stuck by me. He was always in my ear, like, hey, don't worry, something's gonna come. Just stay positive, go in the rink every day. And even my line mate was like, it's not your loss. And at the time he's number one in the league in scoring. The kid's 17 years old, put up 101 points, like just ridiculous. And just the way I trusted him as a line and how he trusted me, we just had that click and just making sure, I was still giving him my best because he deserves it. And, the team deserved it too. And all the guys, were like, hey, like, sorry about everything. And, all the boys had my back and didn't really think of it as any negatives. If anything, I thought it was just more fuel to just keep going. And I never really listened to anybody telling me I was too small. Yeah, I kept it in the back of my head, but I knew what I was and I knew what I was capable of. And that's the only thing that really mattered to me. And I knew the people who believed in me. And that's what just kept me going. And just talking with Jeff a lot, making sure I was doing everything right. Just making sure I had little details in practice and just made sure I was staying in it, because it doesn't make you not love the game anymore. I mean, never really lost passion for the game whenever I got traded in the USHL or anything like that. It was just, hey, all right, like I'm ready for this. And I wasn't ever really, I was sad, but I never really thought of, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. I never turned into that kind of mindset. And then, finished the year and didn't really have one. And now with everything that's happening, and I was like, man, like, is this really gonna end like this? And when they call the season and I'm still, not hearing from too many schools. Like Agent was talking to a bunch, but wasn't really having really like serious yet. And
So your season gets called off and you're still without a deal.
Yeah.
No idea where you're going to college. We're now what, March?
No clue. Yeah. No idea. No clue.
And then what happened? And somebody came in, right?
Yeah. I remember waking up one morning, I'm home. It was like probably a week and a half, 2 weeks since I've been home. And I get a call one morning. Slept past it. I wake up and it's a Minnesota area code called me in the morning. And I'm like, is this spam or like, is this a fake number calling me or something? And I remember coming downstairs for dinner, just kind of blew it off. Didn't really think it was a real call. And then I'm on the couch watching TV with my dad, and I get a call from the same Minnesota area code. So I'm like, let me answer this real quick. And I answered the phone, and he's like, yeah, this is the coach from Northern Michigan. I was like, oh, like, hey. And he was like, yeah, I tried to reach you this morning. And I was like, oh, like, sorry about that. I just, kind of didn't hear your call and stuff like that. And he's all right with it. He's a great guy. And he's like, hey, like 20 minutes into the conversation, we're just talking to each other. And he's like, I got a scholarship for you. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. So he's like, talk with your parents and stuff. We'll talk again tomorrow. And we could discuss more. And remember hanging up, my dad's downstairs cooking steaks on the grill, and he hears me on the phone. He's clueless, has no idea who it is, what I'm talking about, and just kind of took off. And the next day, he's like, let's jump on a Zoom call. We'll do like a little visit, do like a little official meeting with the whole staff and where they wanted me in the lineup and where they see me fitting in. And remember my parents joined the call that day too, and great call. Obviously it was a great call, but after I hung up with them, and my dad was like, if I were you, I'd take it right now. And I was like I'm honestly thinking about it. And I felt pretty confident, and they wanted an answer in the next 2-3 days. And I was like, all right, let me call. So I called Coach Keith. And we talked about it. He thought it was a great option, great opportunity. Saw where I was going to play, saw the role I was going to be put in right away. And as a freshman, you're going in as a 21-year-old freshman who's been out of school for 3 years, and you're going in as technically a freshman, but you really don't feel like one. And I called him. He's talking to some schools. He's like, hey, this might be why everything works out for a reason. And I called them the next day, and he was like, so what's up? You gonna come to Northern? And I was like, I'm in. And then just from there, I signed my NOI and took care of everything else, and that's where I'm going in the fall.
That's pretty incredible, Mike. Talk about every player has his own path, and they may all end up in the same spots at some point, but the journey to get there is going to be completely different. right? And I mean, you've been around this game long enough, and we've seen a lot of really good players come out of our club in particular, the district, and areas, and it's all over the country now.
Mhm.
And we've seen it where guys have, they've gotten their commitment, they received their commitment at 15, 16 years old. At 18 years old, they're stepping foot on that campus. Nothing has
Yeah.
changed. It's all lined up, right?
Mhm.
And at 15 and 16 at 16, when some of these kids are getting their commitment, if you rewind, you're actually leaving tier 1 to go to tier 2.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
coming back as an overage 16-year-old. You're playing 2 years of 18. You're playing for a couple teams during your first year of junior hockey in multiple leagues, going from the East Coast to the Midwest and back,
Mhm.
to at 19 not even knowing where you're going to play again.
Yeah.
You have a college commitment, and you look at it, you end up in the BCHL, which was probably a perfect fit with the perfect coach
Yeah.
for you at that time.
Mhm.
And you're on a top team and you're doing well. And again, right before the season ends, you're hit with another significant change, and
Mhm.
that scholarship's gone. And I remember having those conversations with you after. Well, what do I do? And we both said, just go play, right?
Yeah.
You've got surround yourself with really good people that are going to help you, and you've always been able to do that. And people that look after you and want to help you. Um, and where most people would have panicked and maybe cashed in and said, what, I'm done here. You
Mhm.
stuck with it, and I think that's a great testament to the character that you are, and your ability to just continue to push through. And then your season ends short, completely out of your control again.
Yeah.
And you find yourself with a scholarship to a great school, to a great hockey program,
Mhm.
and talk about completely different, right? You never even flew on campus.
No.
You haven't
No.
officially toured the
Nope.
school or anything, right?
Yeah.
The power of technology in today's chaos.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and look, there's going to be other kids going through it right now too, I'm sure.
Mhm.
But you look if you were sitting there as a 10-year-old looking into your crystal ball and you said this is all going to play out, like, would you really have stuck with it, or would you say, I don't know, like, I'll find something else to do?
Yeah.
That's wild. But at the same time, your story is so unique, and I think can be such a powerful influence to today's hockey player, or not even hockey. I mean, we can translate your story to any path of life.
Mhm.
And that, look, things aren't going to be perfect all the time. There's things
Yeah.
that you can control, and there's things that are completely out of your control. Um, and you have really just done a phenomenal job of navigating your way through that. And I guess I'll ask you this: like, if you were to look, at today's player, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old, even, go a little bit younger, a little bit older, like, would you have any specific advice that you could maybe give to them, knowing, hey, there isn't a perfect path, and you can't control everything, and
Mhm.
your story, can really go into detail on that.
Yeah.
How would you, if you had to put your coach's hat on, like, what would you tell these kids?
Um, Probably just stay patient. Don't rush the process. The worst thing you could do is rush it, and that's when you make a mistake, and that's when it could really cost you. And I think if some of these kids in nowadays want to have their futures mapped out, and for me, I wanted to have my future mapped out, but I didn't really put it into like, oh, 2 years I'm going to be here, there, here. I knew where I wanted to get to, and I didn't know I was going to get it that quick right into the juniors. Like, I thought, yeah, like maybe I would have a good year, stay in the NCDC the whole year, and then see what would happen after it. And like they don't really. I stayed USIS all 4 years, went to a good prep school all 4 years. Then I stayed back the second year after school and played at home for a year, which was good, being around home and not doing school and just worrying about hockey, because it's going to happen when you go away. You're going to be 15 hours away from home, or in some cases 2 days from home. So you're gonna have to be on your own. You have to worry about yourself, and it's gonna be accountable on and off the ice. And when you're how you hold yourself on and off the ice, and what you do with yourself, and how you know manage your body, and just take care of yourself, because it's a grind. It's not all rainbows. It's not all yays. It's not it's tough, and you got to wake up and practice every morning. And if you have a two a day, or if you have optional ice, go. Like, I think, if unless, like, you're really sick, or you're not feeling too well, or you're hurt, or then going for treatment and stuff. But make sure you're taking care of your bodies, and you're doing the extra stuff that needs to get done, because if it's going to help you in the long run. If you're playing over 20 minutes a night, and you're in the third period up by one, and you're trying to protect the lead, that's when you're going to have to give the extra 10% to make sure you get 2 points. Or you lose a point here, you go into overtime and you lose, you get 1 out of 2 points, and then you're like, that extra point could have separated us from somebody and gotten home ice advantage. So you never know when it's going to hurt you or help you. And just to not really worry about what it looks like now, because I didn't, as much as I wanted to play AAA, I'd never wanted to go down to AA. But it just had to be done. And you didn't really care about people are gonna tell me I'm playing AA, and it's not good, and I'll never be able to recover from this. And that's not how you have to think. Like, if you want to go somewhere, then it's not gonna be straight smooth sailing. I mean, when I looked up, and when I was playing it with you and everything, and I see all the banners up hanging in the rink of, like, past guys, of like Robinson, Gaudreau, then later, like, a guy I played with, like Evan Barrett, like, third round draft pick to the Chicago Blackhawks. Watching him play was unbelievable. And now he just signs a 3-year entry level contract with Chicago. A guy like Matty Cash that's going to Ohio State next year, Colin Felix at UMass Amherst. And I wanted to be with those guys, and I wanted to just do whatever I wanted to, and to make sure that all the people that told me I couldn't, and I just wanted to prove them all wrong, and do it for myself and my family, because they've been with me through day one, and my dad's the one that got me into this sport. So he really deserves a lot of it. But I wouldn't really put too much on it, as long as you have a good mindset, be a good teammate, and just just love the game.
Sure. Well, Mike, I think it's phenomenal advice. I think for the guys that grew up around you, the coaches that have been there to kind of watch you as you've run your path, it's been a journey, to say the least. And I don't think there's a coach here that wouldn't respect you and what you've accomplished. And your ability to stay mentally strong has been quite remarkable. So I really appreciate you sharing your story. I think it's one that a lot of kids and players will be able to utilize, and see, like, it's not all going to be perfect, and not everything's going to fall in place. But continue to push through, and
Mm-hmm.
you have more control over that final destination than a lot, if you're willing to continue to grind it out, and push through. And we really appreciate you taking this time. We wish you all the best. You have a unique summer of off-ice training, now that everything is going to be changed around a little bit. And we look forward to seeing you off to be a Wildcat. And we wish you all the best in the next couple of years to come, and look forward to watching you on the ice throughout college, and then hopefully afterwards as well.
Yeah, thanks, Halsey.
All right, Mike, thanks a lot.